Today,
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams.
show on die-offs. This is
Chicago
show
division,
that's
fueled
ready
by heated dreams.
for several weeks.
Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm.
So James Lucid put some songs together that definitely needed to be done. And it makes a mockery of TEPCO and Calm Down Charlie in particular. And something about music, isn't it? It's a wonderful thing. We'll get more of that over the next number of shows. So to die off tonight, we got 987 clicks to get through of the news. Die-offs. And it's not that many pictures, all things considered. So this was the original thumbnail I had put together. Anytime I can stop double clicking. And I forgot about that one because we went to do it a couple of weeks ago and I'd hurt myself, right, out mowing the lawn. There we go. Everything is working the wrong way. Let's get after it. We got a big show to get through. Can we eat Japanese seafood after Fukushima discharged nuclear treated water? And so that story is the picture they're giving you is showing you pictures of tanks, right? And what happened was the buildings were destroyed in the first 6 days. This is 2011, 13 years ago. And so the emissions, this is only 2 of the 4 buildings, and all the reactor cores in 4 buildings are gone. They're gone. And there was 8 fuel pools at the top of the buildings, and they're gone. And each fuel pool had at least 4 reactor cores, and they store them there because they don't have a repository anywhere on the planet. And so the cover-up has been very successful. They're very successful. There's no opposition. You can't really call what I'm doing opposition, but I am running an educational program. And what I mean by opposition is somebody can come out and challenge them on a large platform. I did have 24,800 subscribers for 5 years. I never gained one, never lost one. And then when I was out looking for spiders, they took down my 1,600 presentations on it. And anybody that's watching this not familiar with it, think about how much work it takes to do one of these presentations. If you happen to watch this particular video, you'll get a pretty good handle on it. So obviously everybody's hearing about the new bird flu. Finland will start vaccinating humans. You know, slaves, the little guinea pigs, in a global first. And Johnson is a reporter on Forbes. Of course, Forbes is disgusting. My goodness, we've called him out so many times. It's unbelievable. Whoever works at Forbes is part of an agenda, and they're there to get some street creds before they move on to their next nightmarish assault on humanity's job. Here's the latest news on the global outbreak of H5N1 bird flu started in 2020. Think about that statement right there. And recently spread among cattle in the United States and marine mammals across the world. So in cattle, which is United Nations says Bill Gates says I've got to get rid of them because they fart too much. It's quite a coincidence. And marine mammals, so bird flu in marine mammals. I'll come back to that in a second. And I got an easy way of explaining that one for you, which has health officials closely monitoring it and experts concerned the virus would mutate and eventually spread to humans where it is proven rare but deadly. That's an interesting connotation to put on it. It's proven rare but deadly. So it leaves a whole lot of latitude open to extrapolate or to expand upon. Avian influenza, keep out. Finland's going to vaccinate the vulnerable population, that's anybody without an education, like farm workers, against the bird flu earlier next week using 10,000 vaccine series. Each with 2 doses required as part of the European Union deal with vaccine maker to provide up to 40 million vaccines to 15 countries. And of course, a vaccine works this way is that for a flu vaccine, they predict a certain strain of a flu will meander through the populations, airports and buses and subway stations, etc. And so the vaccine is dependent upon that particular brand or that particular number that's associated with the flu turning into an event, basically, right? And if they get it wrong, then the vaccine is targeting the wrong. But, there's so many controversies. We're not going to go down that road tonight. The World Health Organization announced a 4-year-old child in India was, because you're not allowed to talk about it, right? You're not allowed to question. 911, you can't question the bird flu. You can't question whatever the hell it was in 2020 they done to the planet. But recovered after suffering from seizures, respiratory diseases. This was an Indian child, a 4-year-old child. In India, where there's 1 million children die of dysentery, diarrhea, and pneumonia each year. But this one wasn't dysentery, diarrhea, and pneumonia, which all has the exact same symbols or symptoms, rather. It was blah, 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 flu. And recovered from the seizures, respiratory diseases, fever, and abdominal cramps. It's also known as food poisoning. Has infected around 100 people globally since 1998, but he just said it started in 2020. Remember that. And this is the second human case in India, a population that has upper and lower castes, and the lower castes are spat upon and abused by all of society. So that's not a society, is it? Bear with me. We got a lot of die-offs, a lot of whales coming up, a lot of birds, insects. It's overwhelming amount of stories that I should have got to a long time ago, and I apologize to the birds and insects and whales. Dozens of cows infected with bird flu have either died or been slaughtered in Colorado, Ohio, Michigan, South Carolina, Texas, which is unusual since, unlike poultry, cows cost more to slaughter. And around 90% usually make a full recovery. 90% usually make a full recovery. Not get them all, Bill Gates said so. Dozens of cows infected with bird flu have either died or been slaughtered. Dozens of cows infected with bird flu. And this is... Anyway, I got 3 more clicks to get through. I'm not going to do the whole story because we don't need to. A new study examines... This is their version. I'm going to show you something you have to consider, too, that they're not going to acknowledge. A new study examining the 2023 bird flu outbreak in South America that killed around 17,400 elephant seal pups. Now, we covered that when that happened, by the way. Bird flu outbreak. And 24,000 sea lions found a disease spread between the animals in several countries. First known case of virus mammal of bird flu transmission. Another case of bird flu detected in dairy workers, blah, 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 in Michigan. And the cases aren't connected. So it's a random cow, again, got infected. Interesting, right? Because a lot of people hate the cows because they fart a lot in the globalist movement. And this is the first person in the United States to report respiratory symptoms connected to a bird flu, although the symptoms are resolving according to the Center for Disease Control, bought and paid for by the local globalist machines. A new study with mice suggested that drinking infected milk can spread the disease, and that a certain type of pasteurization may not always be effective in killing the virus. And so they're subtly, but in a major platform, starting off this narrative. And this is how we see all of these narratives show up, basically. So did bird flu kill 70% or 40% of the population of the gray whales? Because we hear this bird flu constantly, and The people that are bought into this or invested in it, who knows, refuse to consider other narratives, which is not really science, is it, once you start doing stuff like that? Scientists are investigating. Another word for Jack the Ripper is a scientist. The cause is a nearly 40% decline. One primary suspect is food scarcity. Food scarcity. So lack of food. In other words, they, starved to death. That's what we covered. We covered all of this over the years, right, as it's happening. The whales reached a population of about 27,000 in 2016. Actually, they were dying in 2013, 14, 15, and 16. This is their version of that particular story, is that population peaked at 27,000 and dropped 16,650, which is 10,350 dead whales that died of food scarcity / starvation / emaciation. And birth rates are down 40% in just the last year. It's called leukemia because they're bathing in radiation and they're bioaccumulating. It's because they eat the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, the microscopic animals, right? So the bioaccumulation is insane. By the way, they've been trying to blame it on ship strikes, I noticed, for the last number of years, but this last couple of, say, 5 months, they've been beating that drum in every single story. But if you go back to 2023, March the 20th, and you read that story, there was 1,200 reports of whales and boats collisions since the worldwide database, worldwide. That's every country. That's not just Canada or America or something, or North America. It's every country combined was 1,200 reports of whales and boats. So say it did in a couple of years, there was another 1,200, despite the fact that that's the number of history, is 1,200. But let's just say the last couple of years, there's a lot of drunk, rogue seaboat captains on the ocean. They're running over whales, right? Because whales are too stupid to get out of the way. And my apologies if you get any slurp. I should remember to turn down the volume. But because when you're telling these stories, you got to go into a focused train of thoughts. And you'll see that show up multiple times. Where you're afraid of skipping a beat because then you lose track of what you're supposed to do, right? Because you can't script everything out. It's just too much work, okay? I'm by myself. It typically takes 5 people to work the equipment that I got. I got to do all that myself on top of it. So I'm a little overwhelmed, but it's always been that way. Not that you get used to it. It's just you learn to do it. In 2007, worldwide database was saying 1,200 whales. Okay, back to the U.S. biologist probes to deaths. This will make sense for you because I'll bring in that other story and help bring it together for you. U.S. biologist probes deaths of 70 emaciated gray whales. And then there was an extra. So there was 10,350 gray whales died. That they acknowledge. There's more than that, obviously. They didn't just start dying in 2016 because we have the headlines pre-2016. They were dying before that. Post-Fukushima, though, in these large amounts, right? Did a marine heat wave cause 7,000 whales to starve to death? The heat wave was the radioactive plume that... The radioactive fallout killed the phytoplankton. The phytoplankton is one of the moderators of the oceans and freshwater included. And the phytoplankton, the base is the food chain, the base is the oxygen chain, the base is the carbon sequestering chain. Super unbelievable. There's over 50% of the oxygen on the planet is coming just from the Pacific, and that's from the phytoplankton, right? I mean, there's other species producing oxygen, but that's the biggest byproduct, and even waves crashing on the coastlines liberate a lot of the oxygen back into the environment. So they discovered, with artificial intelligence, it was an extra 7,000. There's been a mortality event for humpback whales, many others, and I'll show you a couple coming up. 7,000 humpback whales, extra whales, dead using artificial intelligence because they have pictures of all the whales over the years, and 7,000 whales are missing. And there's a migratory route that they take, and cameras are much more prolific, and whale watching is too. And so when they don't show up in database, they're considered dead because they're genetically built in. They've been doing it for millions of generations. It's programmed in these routes that they're going to take. And we've seen them showing up in fresh water, hundreds of miles up freshwater rivers. Like, say, there's hundreds of miles for a couple that showed up in Montreal. Montreal, Canada's never seen a whale ever come up to Montreal. It's fresh water for a very long distance, hundreds of miles, right? All right, so Fukushima had multiple reactors melt down and fuel pools detonate and melt down. And this was a huge radioactive fallout. Remember, after Chernobyl closed 9,400 farms, right? This is a model based on the French government. That's 20 days right there, basically. 19 days. And radioactive fallout of cesium-137 at 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. We've never seen anything like that. And if you were to write a book and say that this was going to happen pre-Fukushima, everybody would have laughed at you. So you got mass mortality events of humpback whales, minke whales, gray whales, North Atlantic right whales. I got a nice, neat little package there for you. But you also got unusual mortality events for seals and sea lions and elephant seals and birds and beak whales. There was over 1,000 beak whales showed up along the coastline of the United Kingdom in different stages of decomposition, which meant the die-off was sustained. And it's clearly, when you're seeing, this is all post-Fukushima, when you're seeing these kinds of connotations, I'm not laughing, this is the gallows laugh, we are in an extinction event. This is clearly an extinction event. The killer whales are showing up emaciated, starving to death, and they eat over 300 species. And so clearly they have leukemia from bioaccumulation of radiation, because there are still species out there. And none of them are healthy. There's no big amount of it anymore. But the ocean is pretty big, right? 70% of the planet. And so it's the first thing you noticed disappear was the shellfish, because they bioaccumulate radiation. And we'll jump into today's stories now. Shellfish bioaccumulate radiation 125,000 times more than a fish does. And a fish is we've seen fish with almost 1 million atoms per kilogram. So, I mean, that's cancer and heart problems, liver problems, lung problems on your dinner plate, basically, right? Just a single meal will mess you up for the rest of your life. And ultimately take your life. But if you keep eating it, you'll have a heart attack. All right. So let's come back to this one. So they're going to start vaccinating for bird flu. Bird flu allegedly killed 17,400 elephant seal pups. Seal pups. Right? Don't forget, it's not elephant seals, elephant seal pups. And so the elephant seal, if it can't find food, it abandons the babies. And they need milk, right? And so then they end up starving to death. And the pictures were all clearly emaciation. And 24,000 sea lions between the animals in several countries. All right. So before I can get into the night show, I just got to cover that. And these are, unfortunately, very complicated shows because I got to try and make sure I don't make a simple mistake, not even a Freudian slip. Because my detractors, which is the pro-nuclear community, will seize up on that. Will seize up on that and use that to bludgeon common sense. I think we got it. Here we go. A little bit more complicated than that. Bear with me. Why is it so hard for me to do things, I wonder? I got no idea. Anyway, let's keep going here. Let's keep her going. I don't know what the hell is going on here. One more try. Give me one more try. Just one more second. Doesn't always work out the first kick at the can, I noticed for me. So here we go. I got to fix that. I really do. So there was the 24,000 sea lions was really interesting. They blamed it on the deadly bird flu outbreak. This is one of the stories. And look at a picture of the sea lion. This is not bird flu. This is emaciation. And it's brutal emaciation. I thought that was like, why would they show you that picture? Because that's what they want you, when they see a whale like that, they want you to think bird flu, right? At least 3,000, that was around 5,000 sea lions. But then they got this picture. So, 3,487 sea lions due to the virus / bird flu, right? Then they show you another picture of another unbelievably emaciated. And so it takes a very long time for them to lose that much blubber to whittle down to a sack of bones. I've never even heard tell of something like that pre-Fukushima, and I've been on the ocean extensively, in both oceans, in Canada, for instance, the Atlantic and the Pacific. I've about seen and done it all, and this is, I've never seen nothing like that. So why would you show us pictures of emaciated, clearly emaciated sea lions and conflate it with a bird flu when a bird flu causes nerve illnesses and it's very fast acting and the animals are all dizzy and everything. It was very, very, very strange behavior, very lethargic and everything else, right? Not emaciated. Clearly, this is not bird flu they're showing you. This is emaciation. So they had done the same thing by conflating, I lost my train of thoughts. They had done the same thing by conflating domoic acid and the die-offs. And the same thing with the domoic acid. It would be all these birds, like, absurd amount. By the way, there's, in 2015-16, it was 1.4 million common murres showed up emaciated. They didn't die of the bird flu. It was emaciation. They starved to death. And at the same time, which are, the common murres, they dive 600 feet all day. And they feed on anchovies and squid and sardines and krill and et cetera, et cetera. But there was also at the same time 1 million Cassini auklets. They were on their migratory path back to Australia. And they showed up emaciated, and they eat microscopic animals. So you had mass die-off in over 1 million of the same species, 2 different species. There was other birds at the same time, by the way, dying off. But in particular, there was over 1.4 million common murres, which dive 600 feet all day, which is so significant. And the Cassini auklets, which are skimmers, they eat microscopic animals like the phyto and the zooplankton and that. So 2 different spectrums of the food chain showing up emaciated on the Pacific. But we also seen that 2 years ago here in the Atlantic. And I was out and sleeping in a tent in a snowstorm and an ice. We had an ice storm the first night, and we've seen the pictures, anybody been around the world, of everything covered in ice, in my tent included. It's a 4-season tent, so, and hopefully they'll get more use. And then, but I was worded just for that, right? We went down, camped out on site, and the next night was a snowstorm. The next night was a windstorm. in a tent. I showed you those pictures a couple of years back, right? Are they on this site? Yeah, they should still be on this site. 7 dead gray whales washed up on the shores of Alaska in a single weekend. 7. This is 2019. I'm trying to lay some foundation here. 7 emaciated gray whales washed up on the shores of Alaska, and that single connotation, single week. Okay, we're just starting now. Dead whales are washing up on the shores of North America at increasing and alarming rate. Well, there was 10,340 of them they acknowledged died. And they died of starvation. They were trying to conflate it with ship strikes, but as I showed you earlier, in history, up to 2007 was only 1,200 ship strikes. How do we get an extra 20,000 ship strikes in such a short period of time? Well, you don't. So there has to be something else going on. As of June 27, the U.S. has the largest record for dead gray whales on the coast with 85 that year, 2019. And what month was this? July, very early 2019. Mexico narrowly follows the United States with 78. And just like so, for everyone you find, there's 9 more to 10 that sank. And the humpback whales, an absurd number have died, and then they acknowledged there was an extra 7,000 missing. Dead. All right, 1,000. We got a lot of stories, and there was way too many stories to get underneath the video. It's just I gave up. There clearly wouldn't have been enough room to. And let's run through this as best we can. We got a lot of emaciated animals, marine mammals, a lot. Like, oh my. 1,000 migratory birds are dead after colliding with a Chicago building. How can you not absolutely love these species, all these wonderful, amazing species? And we're trying to go out in space and look for another planet with species on it when this planet is saturated, not anymore, with all the most wonderful things on the planet. And we snatched their lives with radiation in increments over 80 years. Have so many birds in one building is just devastating. Yeah, really. It's a very tragic amount of birds to find dead at all, especially for one building. Well, maybe there's something else happened there. And we've seen many incidences. A couple of years ago, there was millions of insect-eating birds showing up dead. There was 192 species in Canada, United States showed up, and they were emaciated. They had no fat, they had no muscle, they were completely emaciated. They had flown until they dropped. They couldn't find food because the food chain is broken. And it's you might have some end up in that position, but not 1.2 knows how many millions and 192 different species. And when there's no precedence for that ever happening before. To have so many birds at one building is just devastating. So clearly this was something else. This wasn't bird strikes. The mass collision. They dive-bombed the building and committed suicide is what happened, Dana. Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks. I appreciate your honesty. We've covered this verbatim. And we covered this so much, anybody that's been around can't live in denial. It doesn't work anymore. All it does is make you upset. Let's keep rolling. Marineland's under investigation. 17 beluga deaths. And the beluga is the only whale with a head that can rotate. And which it gets along with humans. Unbelievable. It's a non-aggressive species. And it's smart as frig. It plays with kids that comes to view them in these stupid aquariums, right? And peekaboo and stuff like that. Very easy to train, very affectionate, like a puppy. A lot of people describe them that work with them. 2 more beluga whales died at Niagara Falls tourist attraction. It could be because the food chain is so poisoned and they eat fish, and you can't filter the water. Who knows where to get in their water? If it's coming from the glaciers or anything, it's going to be nasty. Radioactive water, but the fish are going to be radioactive. So bioaccumulation is a real thing, right? Causes all kinds of problems besides cancer, heart problems, liver problems, lung, and it's not just humans. And we've covered so many stories of the acknowledgement. I just can't recall everything, even though I'm getting there sometimes. The mammals' habitats are being degraded by climate change, which is 80 years of radioactive fallout. It's like a garbage can diagnosis, right? Climate change. It's your tin cans, pop bottles, and your cardboard. Because that's what they've been doing for the majority. The average person thinks that's what climate change is, right? That's why they break their neck to recycle that stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But the propaganda is something wrong with that. Forcing tens of thousands of beluga to change their migration patterns and feeding grounds. Well, this is the migration and feeding grounds are built into their genetic disposition. It's coded into their DNA. There's nothing they can do about it. And there's another element that is stopping them from succeeding in that direction. And that is the radiation has broken the food chain, broken the oxygen chain, and broken the regulations of the ocean chain. So the ocean heats up, and the animals can't survive in certain conditions, right? 16 beluga whales and 1 orca have died at Marineland since 2019. Well, for starters, it's clear there's something else going on, and bioaccumulation of radiation causes heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, and many, many diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. And butterflies, bees, bugs, and more. The summer of insect counting gets underway. The summer of insect counting. I gotta clear my throat a little bit here tonight. In Germany, the environmental group has invited people to spend an hour counting the insects they see in a 33-foot radius. I'm not finding, most of the places I'm going to, I'm finding 0. Very difficult to come across any bees in the wild, any ants in the wild. Very difficult to come across any wasp in the wild. Insects are an essential building block of ecosystems, crucial to pollination, or spiders in particular. I can't find them out there in Mother Nature. You find them on man-made structures, but not, and the webs are always deformed, but not in nature. Crucial to pollinators' food chains to keeping the soil productive, but from bees to butterflies, insect populations have been declined in recent decades. Yeah, and you can trace the whole decline of the species, all species, back to the nuclear testing. Then the cancer cluster started in the early 70s. A woman was fined $88,000 after kids collected seashells on a beach. Well, clearly this is not the beaches that I've done research expeditions on, where the sand is actually made of those shells breaking down over millions of years. But yet you couldn't find shells on those beaches. And I'll show you that stuff coming up actually later. She got $88,000 fine. That made all the news. That's the quickest way to get your message out there. Give someone an $88,000 fine for picking up a few seashells. 72 seashells. What they actually harvested was a special kind of clam, protected due to population decline / radioactive fallout. And so she received on-the-spot ticket and an $88,000 fine. $88,000 on-the-spot ticket. And the nuclear industry gets a pat on the back and a bonus. After explaining her mistake to a judge, the fine was reduced to $500, and her children were taught the difference between a clam and a seashell. Humpback whale washes ashore in Oregon beach. His death is a mystery. A young male humpback and they bloat up pretty quick when they die. And it's looking emaciated on his tail, though, isn't it? Every death imperils their species. 2024 already hosts a triumph, and I kind of grab all stories that's showing up and looking for patterns later, so bear with me. Every death imperils their species. 2024 already holds triumph and tragedy of the North Atlantic right whale. They saw the birth of 19 critically endangered, but only 14 survived. And they're not in their normal habitat. We're finding them now up in the St. Lawrence on the east coast of Canada in the Atlantic, of all places. And the people that are so-called in government agencies or got themselves in a position where they call themselves they're in charge of the whales are the very last people you want to have in that position. They're the most ruthless people the majority of the times you can imagine. And only 70 of the estimated 356 whales are breeding females. And each birth is a big deal. Indeed, my heart goes out to these species, particularly post-nuclear industry. The winter brought 19 such occasions, including 4 to a first-time moms. It's reason to celebrate for sure. And just 4 months into the new year, 2024 is already the deadliest year for the right whales since 2019, since post-Fukushima. 5 whales have died, scientists said. 5 whales have died. And 4 other calves are missing and presumed dead. And so that's 9. They don't go missing. They don't leave their mother's side, right? Parks Canada reveals additional details about a deadly bear attack in Banff. And I've been following bear attacks a lot and looking for any trending upwards attacks on humans and pets in particular. Because as we see the species die off, the bear are at the top of the food chain like the humans, right? And so, a lot of the small creatures will go before the humans start to go. Even though there was a significant adverse side effects on humans, deaths in humans recorded post-Fukushima in the first year. And so, because the bears become more aggressive, there's less food now. They can't find their normal food. And a lot of them become emaciated on top of that from the radiation. So it's very difficult for them to catch food. So you're more likely to see this human interactions. And I do believe that's what we've been recording. Unusual event, over 250 dead sea lion pups found on the California island, puzzling researchers. Well, why would it puzzle? Clearly these are not healthy. Like a healthy seal won't have any wrinkles in their skin whatsoever. Very, very plump. Very fat. Lots of blubber. And you can see the pelicans also. We've seen a big die-off. We've got stories on that coming up. 250 dead California sea lions. Pups. And usually the pups are dying because they get abandoned. Now normally they would go into the tidal zone and just eat rocks and whatever was on the rocks, like starfish or snails or whatever. They would ingest that and then they would excrete the rocks, right? But there's nothing on the beaches. The beaches are sterilized from Fukushima. An unusual, and I'll be showing you that coming up, an unusual increase in numbers of aborted California sea lion fetuses. When there's no food, they'll abort the species and then they'll just leave them there, right? This is normal. It's very unusual pre-Fukushima, but now it's actually normal. Approximately 50 dead sea lion pups observed on May the 7th, with the number rising to 288 on May the 14th. So there was a consensus among the parents to abandon the pups, which meant that there was no food. No obvious cause of deaths were noted, and I made similar observations in the Channel Islands of Mexico, making it a bigger than local event. So this is a coast-wide event because the food chain is broken. Pup born in May usually do not survive. That was another statement that they were making. Lies at the edge of the breeding range for sea lions, relatively new colony compared to the main ones in Southern California. So they don't change their habits, because their habits are genetically instilled into them through their DNA, where they're going to breed. And we got colonies that were breeding on this coastline for millions of generations, and all year long, like puffins and common murres and turs and shearwater and everything else, and kittiwakes. And so all year long, the rocks were, because they're pooping so much, the rocks were always white. But in the last number of years, what we notice is the rocks are no longer white, and the birds are not showing up. Now, we have the biggest colonies here in the Atlantic Ocean for seabirds. There's 46 million seabirds a year come through here. We haven't seen any in the last, 4 years now. It's a relatively new colony compared to the main one. Well, there's no such thing as a relatively new colony. If it's a new colony, then it's a colony from somewhere else to set up shop there, because they couldn't survive wherever else, and they can't survive here. But, they have to set up a colony somewhere, and if they can't have their babies where they normally would have it, and they'll have it somewhere else, they're looking for food. Peak pupping season for the species mid-June, and pups born in mid-May and usually do not survive. No, because there was no food. That's why they were aborted. In recent years, approximately 700 to 800 pups were born on the island, with a couple dozen stillbirths, which is not unusual, right? But in a healthy ocean, it is unusual. Premature births are not uncommon, says Noah. Whenever I see Noah, I just laugh, because they're the least trusting people you can find. Pregnant sea lions need to swim further in search of shifting prey species. And you hear, like, the prey species are not shifting. Like, they're like, oh, hey, George, let's get the group and a couple 100 million of you, and let's go over here for a change. We do this every year for 1 million years. Let's go that way. The species don't work that way. What is the catalyst that is causing them? There has to be a catalyst. So something in the water, or there's no food whatsoever, and they can't make it to their normal spot. So they're so hungry that they look for an alternative, because they couldn't find food for. And this is why you see the like the pictures I showed you earlier from Peru of the emaciated sea lions, the 3,483 sea lions. It takes a long time to get that emaciated. It probably took them several months. They can leave them malnourished. Because they were already malnourished. Get it? Leading to premature births of their pups. They haven't observed any widespread disease. They were trying to blame it all on domoic acid for several years. And when the research finally came out, it wasn't domoic acid. But by then, anybody that had originally read the story is just a casual, right? They're not aggregating it. They're not a voracious aggregator like people like me and you, basically. May affect the sea lion disease or any other factors. So any sign of widespread disease or any other factors. Like, they just ruled out everything. Like, we're stupid. We don't know. So have a nice day. We're not looking anymore. And we took all the money and partied, so screw you. Because they get an enormous amount of money to do their job. They can get boats and planes and helicopters, whatever they want. They can write out a piece of form and they can have it tomorrow morning. Guaranteed paycheck for whoever they're spending the money on, because it's the industry, it's the government's, right? So they did not observe any signs of widespread diseases or any other factors that may affect the sea lion population as a whole. Well, the minute that you exclude the obvious, like Fukushima, radioactive fallout, and broken food chains, is the minute you're no longer a human. Many pelicans have been in distress. Cormorants for nesting is delayed, and they're showing up here on the East Coast where they've never been before. And they're the dominant species currently. And yesterday I covered, what was it, 560 kilometers, I think it was? Or 340 miles. And I got videos and pictures that I don't know if we're going to get to. So let's cover the next one. So before I start that story, let's cover some of the... Brown pelicans were found starving to death on the California coast. And then I got that story. They linked over to it, I think. Yeah. So we'll come to that now in a second. Just let me try to get back on track. So we got pictures from yesterday. I'm going to bring that up for you. And there's not... What I done was I covered... It was 10.5 hours. And I went to all of these little communities, little outports. This one was Chapel Arm. And Chapel Arm is right here. Now this is the bottom of a huge bay. And you can see there's no birds. I got a little video I'll play for you coming up. Like that's a rock out there. But it was stunning. There was a lot of tourists hanging out here. It was, tide was going down. It was pretty low, low tide. And that camera, my God. I got a seagull. A lone seagull. But there's no other species. This is a migratory route where there's 46 million birds. And this is the tip of a peninsula. And it was the opposite of what I'd done the 2 days before, where I covered the opposite side of the peninsula. And that's the route to Long Harbor. Okay. And I shot a little video. My apologies. This is Chapel Arm. Chapel Arm. So we're on the east side. I don't see a freaking thing. A couple of seagulls, but there's no migratory birds. There's no species. It was a bit windy all day too, so. So I got a whole bunch of them places that I done yesterday. And during the show, we're going to flip back and forth. And so you just got a bunch of little pictures of these areas. And so ideally, you want to get into the bottom of the bays. This is where a lot of migratory birds will gather up and start feeding. And it's always relatively calm too, right? Shelter. And we'll go back and forth through some of that tonight. Depends, because these are such hard stories. And so this whole week we're going to be covering die-offs. And just really drive this point out there. Last week we covered radioactive food for a whole week. Brown pelicans found starving to death on the California coast. Why it could be happening. Why it could be found starving. S-T-A-R-V. A.K.A. emaciated. And so, why it could be happening, these are conjectures. Right? When you see those connotations, these are conjectures. Hundreds of birds admitted to the wildlife rehab coming from the cold, emaciated, anemic, essentially starving to death. And so they got their opinion, but their opinions will never include the broken food chain per se and why the food chain is broken. But when you start adding all of this up, and you start to see a bigger picture, starts to come clear, and everything points to an event that happened in 2011. I forgot to turn off my microphone. Hang on. Because the best thing about having a big drink of cold water is the noise you make after. Just kidding you. Feeders are great, but this time of the year, many birds need bugs. That's an interesting statement, isn't it? Yeah, feeders are good for insect or seed eaters, but it's no good for the bugs eaters, the insect eaters, rather. It's good for seed eaters. Backwards that time today. Feeders are great for the seed eaters, but they're no good for the insect eaters. I'll get it right at some point. One of the most diverse groups of organisms on the planet, and that was 192 species died 2 years ago on a migratory route of insect eaters. And there was well over 1 million of them that showed up. And they showed up over a very large area, all these different species, and everything was confirmed as emaciated. And they tried to blame it on another of abnormalities, but it doesn't match up because it's over such a large area. And the only thing that makes sense was it was a lack of insects, because that's what they need for their migratory route, right? Insects live in natural habitats like wetlands, streams, meadows, woodlands, where they fly or waft upwards and are eaten by birds and bats. I haven't got any picture of birds eating insects the last couple of years. Mow your lawn less in early spring to allow flowers to bloom and help early season pollinating insects. Well, like lawns only make up a tiny % of the planet's surface. Just a tiny, tiny. And so if you assume all the birds live in your community, then that's a great idea. But if you're honest, you're going to say, well, birds actually do live in the wild. So why would we have an event in the cities when a bird could just fly? A bird can easily fly to the outskirts of town and get all the insects it wanted, right? Right, because this is, to me, that's what you would typically expect from a scientist instead of gibberish like we're seeing. Like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with not mowing your lawn less in early spring. I do it. I'm probably the last one up in this area to mow his lawn each year. And I leave a lot of my lawn. I just leave enough room where to get the boat in and out or truck and that. Leave some leaves in the falls because their beneficial insects rely on fallen leaves as habitat, especially over the winter. I do that too. Stop using pesticides and herbicides, which I'll never use, which kills the insects and the plants that other wildlife relies on. So when it comes to birds, it's not, if they can't get food, they'll just fly somewhere else and they'll get all the food they want. They can't do it because the food is missing. Like a lot of birds love spiders. You're not getting any spiders out in the woods anymore, and you're not getting birds eating spiders on the houses and man-made structures. They're completely exposed every single day, and the birds are not showing up and eating them because, Mother Nature took its course when you starve everything and break the food chain. Convert part of your lawn to native plant gardens. It brings in. It does help, but birds are not reliant on a community for food. They can easily fly for 10 seconds or 10 minutes and get out into Mother Nature where there should be tons of food, right? But this is the subtle brainwashing. And reducing your carbon footprint. Without carbon, you can't have insects. More carbon, the more insects. So they should be promoting carbon, right? Without carbon, we're going to look like the moon. That's why the moon looks like it does, because there's no carbon there. Maintenance of male-related genes after loss of males in stick insects. Maintenance of male-related genes after loss of males in stick insects. And, when it comes to humans, females are 4 times more vulnerable to radiation than males. And the females are born with all their eggs. So if you have an entity like radiation that targets those eggs, what do you think is going to happen over the long term? And they grow, don't quote me, I can't remember the exact numbers. They're over 2 feet insects. Just wonderful, eh? 8,000 species on the 8 million species on the planet, and we haven't come close to identifying it. And now we're over the last number of years, especially with Fukushima, we're exterminating them. And look at it, look at these stick insects compared to the other species. They're some big boys. 0.5 meter long, so 3 feet long. Southern China declared the world's longest insect. 62 centimeters. Or not 3 feet long, a little over 2 feet. 2 feet long. It broke the record for the length among the world's 800,000 known insects. 800,000. And more than 3,000 varieties of the stick insects have been discovered so far. Dwindling marine species are falling dead on Goa's coastline. Dolphin, dits, and other marine species. There's a recent spat of dolphin dits and other species. And that is India? Yeah, India. So that whole coastline is seeing an unusual event. The disturbing trend follows on the heels of a similar series of dolphin strandings in February. A dead porpoise was reported. There were other incidences involving marine species, a dead turtle. And so they're finding random dead animals and they're linking them all together because that's the right thing to do. And that's unusual to see science play out properly for some reason since Fukushima. Terrestrial animals are also getting stranded at times. A live Indian rock python stuck in the waves was rescued by lifeguards and fire department. So they sent like a python, a snake stuck in the waves, was rescued by lifeguards and the forest department. Getting the python out of the water using a clean bin, and thereafter the rescuers took it to be released in appropriate habitat. And bless their hearts for doing that, really. Because it won't be long now, and the only things we'll have to remember the species will be these stories. In yet another incident, injured birds were found on Zalor Beach. Maybe recall that a large number of seabirds were found injured on the coastline in the last 2 months as well. Well, seabirds don't just get injured, they show up emaciated, right? Reports come in regularly, like the decomposed whale carcass last night. Decomposed whale carcass. And so it's very, the news is very, or the descriptions are very vague. But it is interesting that now they're making a deal out of this because you got turtles and this and that and dolphins and porpoise and whales, birds. It's a stark reminder of the urgent need for enhanced marine conservation efforts. You got to kill nuclear. That's the solution. And it's probably, not probably, it is too late to save the species. But we still got to try to manage the planet for, and hopefully have a future generation. Some species might survive. The majority simply can't. It's not just dolphins. We see turtles and seabirds affected too. So, yeah, they covered that earlier, right? World's most expensive feather sold at an auction. There he is there. Here's a pretty one. Not like all the other feathers. For 46,000 New Zealand dollar, 28,000 US dollars, and 22,000 sterlings, is it, or euros? 38,000 Canadian dollars. Its last confirmed sighting of the bird was 1907. I don't see the name of the bird there, do you? Oh yeah, they did have it there, the Haya feathers. And I think it's because the bird is now extinct. A single feather of the now extinct New Zealand Haya bird set a world record after being sold for almost 50,000 New Zealand dollars. That's crazy. Did I get all of that? Scuba diver's remarkable friendship with a fish has been going on for over 30 years. And so I used to work as a commercial diver, 6 hours a day on the ocean floor. And I've done all kinds of different industries. My favorite was seafood industry. And sea urchins was a real popular one, where you pick 20,000 sea urchins every day. But you're only picking the 3-inch, 3.5-inch sea urchin, right? And all the other ones, and there's all sizes from just that big all the way up to monsters, right? And so you're just picking out 3.5 inch. It's a very sustainable way of harvesting food. And because the sea urchin is full of spines, and so you're not going to be stepping on them. I've had surgery on my hands 5 times from accidentally coming in contact with them. I got one, went right through the bone and out the other side, and I had a plastic surgeon work on it. And you can't get it out of the bone, though, right? And so if I push down too hard. Now, typically, when I was doing the sea urchins, you had at least 100 fish would follow you around. And so if you stayed in the same spot for a couple of weeks, and that wasn't unusual, because the sea urchins are in just massive football fields, because their spines catches kelp, right? Kelp is floating along, algae, and there was 700 algae in BC. I done it on the East Coast too, but the algae will get hung up in the spines, and the sea urchins eat that, see? And also in the spines, that's where shrimp and prawns live. They live other places, obviously, but that's their best spot because the fish can't shoot in because they'll get stabbed up with the spines, right? And then they help clean the shells and that. And so it's a good mutual relationship. But I've seen spots where, like, I worked 10 days in the same spot where I just left the anchor right there with a marker tied onto it at the surface. And when you come back down the next day, the fish are all there waiting for you. Hey, how's it going, Dale? Let's go, buddy. Look, come on. Friendship between a local diver and a fish spanning 30 years. Imagine 30 years. And the same fish live, because they live in that same area. That's their neighborhood. And like the link cod, which is like a gray cod, Atlantic gray cod. The link cod can get pretty friggin' big. We call them bucket heads because when they open their mouth, they're like a bucket, 5-gallon bucket, and it's all teeth. And they'll guard their eggs. And so if you're working there and you're not paying attention and you come up to where their eggs are, they're going to rush you. And when they rush you, their dorsal fins are full of spines that are probably about this long. Very nasty. And there's not much you can do when they get out of the way, but because you're a diver, you're really slow. Everything is slow. This is fast what I'm doing compared to what it's like underwater. So it's really hard to get out of the way, but you always find a way because you don't want to experience that feeling of terror again. There's a leopard hiding in this picture. I'm going to put the picture up on the screen. How fast can you spot it? I'm going to put this. It is on the full screen, Dana. Is Fukushima 4 nuclear reactors and 8 fuel pools melting down the nuclear fallout an extinction level event? My apologies, we haven't done the poll yet, have we? Dana, man, can't take you anywhere. So can you spot the leopard in this picture? If you can't, don't feel bad. I can't. I stared at it. I didn't have it on the big screen, though, so let me look here for a second. There is a leopard in this picture. Yeah, I think I know. I went out and looked through the comments, I think, and then someone described where it was to. But I'd be damned if I can spot it right now. But there's a leopard, and a leopard is big enough to take me or you down. So if he's able to be right there and I can't see him, that's very concerning. Make it very difficult. I can't spot him unless... I got one guess. Unless he's up right there. I think he is. Hey, now this calls for some serious investigative skills coming up here. Let's bring in the hardcore. I think I knows where he's to. I think he's right. He's right there, but that picture's not clear enough, so I actually can't tell. Let me check the comment section, see if anybody spotted him, but I don't see him. Okay, let me get back into that other window because it makes it hard. It doesn't make it too hard, but I can't spot the leopard, to tell you the truth. Just another 30 seconds. Can anybody spot this? Apparently it's not hard to spot, according to the comments section. Did I put it there anywhere? The baboon that ran a railway. Think of this statement here. Jack didn't disappoint either of the two people who put their faith in him. He never made a mistake for the next 9 years. And later he contracted tuberculosis and passed away. And his skull is on display in South Africa. This monkey operated train signals for 9 years without making a single mistake, and became African's railway signalman's trusted work companion, and made his job easier with skill and precision. And this guy hasn't even got legs. Look at this. And he still went to work every day. And he had his trusty sidekick, a baboon or a monkey. I don't know if the story is true or not, but it absolutely won't surprise me. New York Times predicted a 10 million year wait for airplanes, and the Wright brothers proved them wrong in 69 days. So the media said, not in 10 million years will we have an airplane. 69 days later, had an airplane. This invisible killer takes out 3.5 billion U.S. birds a year. This invisible killer, glass. 3.5, so they increased the numbers dramatically. They got to make up some kind of excuse. But 3.5 billion birds a year, just in one country. So, let me bring that up here. 3.5 billion. Let's just do some math for craziness. 3.5, was it? Billion. So let's divide that by 365 days. See how many birds dying every day. That's 94 million birds dying a day. 94 million. Every day. 94 million birds dying every single day. They wouldn't lie to you, would they? 94 million birds, 96 million birds, rather. So let's divide that by 24 hours, out of curiosity, That's 4 million birds an hour. And let's divide that by 60 seconds. I gotta know. It doesn't mean anything, I know. That's 67,000 birds every second in the United States are committing suicide in the buildings. Does anybody believe that? The numbers don't add up, do they? $95 million birds a day. Lying is just so natural for these people, I think. It's more deadly to birds than every predator on the planet combined. Again, they gotta count for like what I'm seeing on my research. So let me come back. Let's go do another look at what I done yesterday. One more. Let's go to the next place, which was Long Harbor. That's not this space. That was the last spot. So Long Harbor was Route 208. Route 208, Long Harbor. So I went to Placentia and St. Bride's. And I might get that tonight. We don't know. And this is one of the first pictures. All you had was kelp weed on the shorelines. It was low tide. And there was a little bit of wind, but it was clear there's no birds. I took the truck yesterday because you're looking at a 10-hour trip. My horse can only handle a couple hours on the motorcycle. And because James donated another 200, along with 100 from Tabitha Goody and 50 from Colette, I was like, yeah, I could do this whole trip now. And so I just went for it. Well, I beat the shit out of myself. And I took the underwater submergible with me. And if I had seen any kind of feeding alongside the coastline, I was going to take the underwater submergible down and throw it in, right? And zip over and see what they were feeding on. And I was able to take all kinds of luxuries with me. So it was a 10.5-hour trip yesterday. Let me get back to the birds here. And so there was no birds. Now, when you're around the wharves, and there was a regatta a week before this, and there's just thousands of people shoulder to shoulder. Everybody was eating popcorn and chips and French fries. There wasn't a single sparrow, not a single finch, not a single robin, not a single bird showed up. It was stunning. I'm going to show you some pictures of that coming up. I forget what I'm doing here. Hang on. So this was yesterday. And again, I covered 550 kilometers of coastlines. And I didn't see any migratory birds or birds besides a couple of residential seagulls, and not very many of them. And another thing, you're not seeing anything on the wharf. You're not seeing like the seagulls bringing in mussels or snails or sea urchins or whatever and consuming them on the wharf. You're not seeing the local kids going down to the wharf and catching fish and cleaning it and leaving something on the wharf. There's nothing there, right? In fact, the wharfs are so empty, the only thing on the wharf was me and the truck. And this is Long Harbor. Long Harbor, of course, has a nickel plant. So you might be able to write Long Harbor. Oh, Dana, it's got a big polluter right there, Dana. That's why. Oh, and I'll give you that. Absolutely, right? That's a big polluter back there. That's a nickel plant, so there's some crazy chemicals. Applies a lot of people in a place where there's very little employment. They can pollute all they want. No one's going to say a friggin' word to them. Have you ever seen a garbage can that was Tetley Tea garbage can? I can probably sell that to the pawn shop, could I, in Las Vegas, I bet you. Well, I've never seen one of these before. They're like the island, a place called... But anyway, no migratory birds. Checked multiple places along the coast. Whenever I got access to the coastline, I stopped and got out and had a look and usually took pictures. And so yesterday was a dud for your migratory species. There was one species that I'll get to. And we got a short video of this I'm going to play coming up. Oh, that's the next spot. Is that? Let me see. Yeah, that's me heading to the next spot. Okay, so just hang on 1 second. And let's play the next video. Oh, where'd they go? Oh. Let's try this next video. That's Long Harbor. This is Long Harbor. And looks like a cormorant just dove right there. Which are not native. Pretty dismal. I'm not sure what that facility is. But we know now it's a nickel
looks like
place,
there's a
right?
main wharf just up right here. I got the underwater drone, and if I can find something sensible, I'll stick the drone in the water. But so far this morning, like, there's no migratory birds in the skies. There's no little finches or robins on the highway. And I'm already after traveling a long way. I still got a long day ahead of me. You got kelp cabbage, or kelp weed rather.
Really stupid.
Really awful looking, but who knows. There's just that one bird, you can see him. A little bit shocked that there's nothing. Not even little sparrows or finches or robins or something. Nothing.
Right, and that was another thing about this, was that because I'm covering long, and you'll see some of that videos maybe coming up tonight, I'll cover long distances on the highway. I'm really looking for any kind of animals or roadkill or something like that, for instance. It's particularly birds, right? And we're in the prime time of the year. It's still peak summer down here, because our summer starts later than most people. We're out in the Atlantic Ocean. It was 97 degrees here today, Fahrenheit, with the humidity. And I got rained out today, like torrential rain. And I was only calling for showers. And I was going to go on the motorcycle today, and I was like, I don't know, it looks pretty dismal. I'll just take the operation in the truck, because I left everything in the truck. I charged up stuff, but I left everything in the truck, the drones and that. And so I said, okay, well, I'll take off just in case it rains. 10 minutes up the road, holy goodness. I kept going, but after 40 minutes, I gave up and came back home. I said, to hell with it. There's nothing I can do, right? I mean, the windshield wipers just slapping. And there was two people on doing some touring on bicycles. I felt I should have stopped and asked them, did they want to take shelter for a little while? Because there was nowhere for them to get any shelter. It had to be just miserable, eh? You know, riding a bike with wet pants, it's not good on your cheeks. So 3.5 billion U.S. birds a year. 3.5 billion is an awful lot of birds every day, right? It's 96, was it? 96 billion birds a day. 96 billion birds a day. And when you do the numbers are so astronomical that there's something else going on in this equation, clearly. And a couple of years back, probably 5 years ago, we covered a story. We turned it into a show where he said there was 2 billion birds a year die in the United States from collision with skyscrapers. And the idea of using those connotations, like how can a bird, for starters, fly through a forest like magic and run into a building? It doesn't make any sense. It happens. I've had it happen in my house, right, where a bird actually ran into the house. He didn't die, he got up and flew away. Only a small percentage of birds die up on impact, with many regaining consciousness and flying off wounded. Now, more in-depth research showing we may be severely underestimating the annual death toll of U.S. birds crashing. The annual death toll suggests between 1.28 billion and 3.65 billion birds physically die, which means because only a small percentage dies, which means there's at least 100 billion bird collisions with glass each year. Well, that's why my friends won't sit by a window anymore, because it's scary, man. Come on. That number, which represents a 350% increase over the previous estimate in 2014. We covered that one in 2014, didn't we? It's just for the United States, meaning the global impact is likely many, many times higher. If it wasn't for the damn buildings, we would have birds everywhere. Dana, I can hear them now. If it wasn't for the nuclear industry, everybody would be healthy. How about that one? And all the insects and birds and mammals and animals would be in harmony, wouldn't they? The whole bloody world is filled with glass right now, said the study leader. The whole world is full of glass, you bastard. His mortal enemy is glass, folks. But his numbers don't add up. And when I read their study, I said, that's somebody that was the teacher's pet and that all the other kids picked on. And he grew up and said, I'm going to show them. And so he got printed, got some attention, and now he's so full of shit, he doesn't even know it. Mexico expedition cited only 6 to 8 Vasquita. I know I'm going to butcher names. I'm really good at that, apparently. The most endangered marine mammal. The most endangered marine mammal is any mammal in the oceans right now, thanks to the nuclear industry and a pulse event from Fukushima. When's that picture taken? May 11th. So that ocean should have been pretty dirty in May. Oh, that's a river, I think, isn't it? Sea shepherd who refuses to acknowledge Fukushima happened. The world's smallest porpoise and most endangered marine mammals may have moved elsewhere in the Gulf, the only place in the world where they live. They all got together, had a union meeting, and said, that's it. We're all going to go somewhere where they can't take pictures of us. Yeesh. Chernobyl's new evolution. Photo of a super-sized mosquito sparks terror. If that don't spark terror, what does, I wonder? I think that story is going to come up again after. Human activity is causing cancer in many species of wildlife. Human activity is causing cancer. Radioactive fallout is causing cancer. And this effect is greatly underestimated. Humans bring about a cancer to a staggering amount of wild species. And they're showing you a beluga. One study found 27% of beluga whales had cancer. 27% of the beluga whales had cancer. Cancer is the leading cause of death worldwide in the United States after heart disease. And so cancer, like when there was when nuclear testing, right, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, you know, the 55-decade nuclear war they had, you call it nuclear testing for some reason. It's a nuclear war, same radioactive fallout. Well, the cancer clusters started in the 70s. When I was 13, 14 years old, there was this kid way up our coast, because where I grew up we still don't have automobiles, and right now there's only 65 people. And so, but up the coastline, this kid had cancer, so every community on the coastline raised money to send up on the ferry that week so that that kid can have some special treatment. Doctors flew in from all over the world to look at this kid and study this kid because they never seen very many kids with cancer before. That's when I was around 13 or 14 years old. And we had a benefit that they had a big, get-together at the local community center. And everybody donated what they could and put it in an envelope. Next day when the ferries, because the ferries come by every day, right? They go out and they pass over this envelope. And this was for this kid. Now you can't find a street where a kid doesn't have cancer. Or multiple or all the kids have cancer. And so what would be the catalyst to make that big of a change? Well, every nuclear power plant is hemorrhaging radiation into the environment, so through the fuel pools. And almost every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms. And then when you put in all the accidents, the events, and then Fukushima and the pulse event, where the whole planet was saturated with radioactive fallout. And I'll just give you an example of that post-Fukushima. There's so many models produced of the radioactive fallout. It was really something. Let me see if I got it smart. I'm smart, right? M-A-R-T, smart. Smart. So, government, this is the French government on nuclear radiation risk, the Ministry of Defense Environmental Industry Research, the IRSN. Radiation levels in the U.S. West Coast of cesium-137, which pulses energy 600 feet, spiked to 1 million times normal, which is 1 million to 10 million atoms. So when these atoms get in your body, just a single one of the anthropogenic man-made, or bird or insects or animals, anything with a long life, the body's attacking it their whole life. And so if they live long enough, the body will build a tumor around that isotope, that atom that's in your body, that anthropogenic man-made one. And because cesium-137 in particular pulses energy 600 feet every second, so this plume, this model, by the way, is only based on 9 days. On the 18th, that's 7 days after the tsunami. And so they have an updated model, and this model here, I'm going to speed it up for you. That's 16 days when the model stops of radioactive fallout of cesium-137 covering the entire planet at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And so that'll cause cancers. But another thing that it causes is heart problems. So when you read those stories, the surge in cancer, cancer is the second leading cause of death worldwide, and after heart diseases. And the Americans, for instance, got the most nuclear reactors, and they said they got the most farms, reactors that are surrounded by farms, so they're eating the most food that is radioactive. And because this stuff is airborne, it covers the planet. It's like you see, covering the entire planet in 16 days. And because it's invisible, snowstorm covering the entire planet, pulsing energy every second, everything is getting a full body X-ray. And so when you see Fukushima radioactive fallout, it is global warming. It was the straw that broke the biosphere's back, right? Because it was such a big pulse event with 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools full of reactor cores melting down at the same time. But also exposures to pollutants. Humans, a cancer-causing species, just spit on us, just vomits on humans. And when they're humans themselves, allegedly, right? A study on beluga whales from the St. Lawrence estuary, which is just up the road from me, basically, which is highly polluted by waste from it's 800 kilometers away to the other side of the island, but because it's a pretty big island. And that's where the St. Lawrence is, just another couple of 100 miles up from that, right? You had to build all the streets. High polluted by waste from aluminum smelting. Well, the St. Lawrence, so all the radioactive fallout coming over from Japan, for instance, when it reaches the Cascade and the Rocky Mountains, it loses a lot of its payload, and that drifts back towards the coastline of the Pacific. But when it does that, the clouds rise up and go over it. Everything that falls out there washes down to the St. Lawrence. So if you got species that are in the St. Lawrence, you expect to see these kinds of conditions show up. That a staggering 27% of the whales had cancer. And you're going to try to blame it on aluminum smelting. I'm not saying that's harmless or innocuous or benign. I am saying that excluding the facts of what really happened is just terrible science, right? Oh, but they did acknowledge another type of contaminant identified by the authors of the new study is the accidental release of radiation like Chernobyl. And one study found association between Chernobyl background radiation and increased cancer rates in birds. And so what a dirty, rotten scoundrel to pretend that Fukushima didn't happen. What a dirty, rotten scoundrel. What a dirty, rotten scoundrel. This is 16 days after the tsunami from the French government of 1 million, 10 million atoms. This is dwarfs Chernobyl by orders of magnitudes hundreds of orders of magnitudes. Like we got the studies showing 220 million atoms from Ottawa of the iodine-129. That's going to saturate the thyroid glands of every species out there. They're producing permanent radioactive hormones for 150 million years. And we have another study of 20 million atoms of iodine-129 particles, which means there's 10 times more iodine-132, 30 times more iodine-131, or 133. They're 9 times more effective ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of insects and birds and mammals and animals and humans than incredibly effective iodine-131 is. And we got studies that quantifies those assertions. We got studies of 450,000 atoms of xenon-133. We got studies of the cesium-137 of 10 million atoms. We got studies of the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. We have overwhelming documentation. So when they come out and acknowledge in the same story, they're talking about cancer in beluga whales, where they, in the very last paragraph, you really want to grab these. Their parents have really hurt humanity by not snuffing them out when they were born. I know it was illegal, but they must have known. Southern California Rescue Center concerned by illness, deaths among the sea lions as the facilities fill. We've seen how many. I've have folders that are stuffed full of die-offs of sea lions, emaciated. It is the first time the Rescue Center has seen a grave season for the sea lions. There was a large die-off in 2013 and 2016, and we've covered all of them many times. This time it's in the middle of a $16 million renovation of its facility. $16 million renovation of a facility. Who blackmailed the government or what? We're going to tell people it's not friggin' demoic acid, it's radiation. If you don't build us this big facility, give us permanent jobs. And every time I talk to these people and I meet them in person, there's just nothing but contempt for them. If you mention the word Fukushima, they'll roll their eyes and literally walk away from you immediately. Like, whoa, I can't go there. You can see like their brain goes into protect the industry mode. So they set up a field hospital in a nearby park. With a roof completes the field hospital where recovering sea lions, harbor seals, and elephant seals can't find food, folks. Room to get healthy, aka fatten up, because they're emaciated. That's why they're showing up. Especially now as reports from the sea lion breeding grounds are causing concern among the marine mammal experts. All turn their backs on us. Extra capacity would be really helpful if we have another unusual mortality event. It's nothing but an unusual mortality event from the headlines that we're seeing every month or so. We cover it. Leaving behind starving pups. They're starving because mommy and daddy couldn't find any food. And that's the Channel Oil and rookeries on top of that. And the last time NOAA, which is just what a useless bunch of goons they turned out to be, declared a mass stranding and die-off of sea lions and seals was about a decade ago. What are you talking about? It's been non-stop for post-Fukushima. It's been non-stop. Warmer surface temperatures. Being a weasel must come some easy to him, right? Forces the mother sea lions to swim further from the rookeries, leaving behind the starving pups. It doesn't work that way, right? The fish don't change their habitat. They're gone. If not there where they're supposed to be, they've been exterminated. So stop making stuff up would be very helpful, so we can come up with some solutions down the road. While many died on the islands, some strong and willful enough to swim ventured across the ocean and were found sick and dying on beaches across the state. While many died on the islands, some strong and willful enough to swim, emaciated, they're talking about, ventured across the ocean, were found sick and dying on the beach. If that don't give you the woolies, what does? That's the guy who always laughed, right? Already, both rescue centers are nearing capacity, with a higher than average number of sea lions born last year. Let me bring up some sea lions for a bit of fun. I'm not going to bring up a whole bunch. Don't worry. Calm down. Relax. Well, actually, you have every right to be worried because you know how bad I get when it. Let me just bring up a couple of sea lion doozies. Oh, baby, don't let me down now. I'm just messing with you. Come on. Oh, the computer's like, there's too much. Can't compute. Well, it's not a normal computer that I got, right? It's a special operating system. They're known as TriCasters. And it was either buy this or buy a Lamborghini, and I bought this instead. Here, let me go back. Where's this one? This is 2013. That's a decade ago, Dana. Not looking good, Dana. 70% of all newborn sea lions may be dying. They're testing for toxins and infectious agents. Of course, which didn't turn out to be true, right? Hang on. I got a folder there. A couple folders. Let me see if I can get it together. Oh my goodness, I got everything coming at me now. Yeah, I can't keep up on it. Well, let me bring up, because I got too much to get through. I'm never going to get through it. At the rate I'm going, it's clear we're not getting through this night. This was a boat. I can't even remember now. It was swarmed by sea lions when it brought its net to the surface. And no one's ever seen this before, where the sea lions were so starved, they swarmed the boat to get their hands on the food.
I've always enjoyed fishing, especially herring, but this has taken the fun right out of it. This is virtually impossible to work.
They couldn't bring the net aboard because the sea lions took over. And they were coming aboard the boat, but it was just terrified everybody. They had no idea. They've never seen anything like this before.
Try trying to work with this every day. Makes life pretty miserable.
They've never seen nothing like it. I've never seen nothing like it in all my years. Rescue of near yearlings are up 65% over the last year at this time, and has received more than 1,000 reports of beach marine mammals and is at its capacity, and responded to 200 rescues. It's strange. Lessened food sources for some animals. Where 250 to 300 dead sea lion pups were born this year. Ahead of the peak pupping season is typically mid-June. And around 25,000 pups are born each year in the rookeries on Channel Island. We've covered a lot on Channel Island of different species dying off. It's not just sea lions. Something happened to make prey less accessible in the last couple of months. Experts are perplexed. Now the food chain is broken. There are also starving pelicans and emaciated elephant seals. Not seal pups, but elephant seals. Also elephant seals. They don't know if there's a type between the starving pelicans and the sea lion pup die-off. Of course there is. Normally they would say, well, both of them are happening at one time. There's something going on here, folks. Not like we don't know if there's any interconnected. I mean, yeah, they live right alongside of each other, but we don't know what the connection could be. Come on over to the cocktail party later, and we'll discuss other things. Farm flying high is a record endangered birds breed. I like good stories like that. It said 5 breeding pairs arrived at Lark Hill last year, which is 2 more than 2023, when they managed to successfully fledge 9 chicks. The lapwings. Lapwings almost always lay 4 eggs, and their decline is down to breeding failure. In many cases, the eggs are eaten or abandoned before they hatch, and even when they do hatch, there are continued losses during the chick phase. So what's going on? And we see this with all the species, not just the lapwings, is it? Yeah, lapwings. Oh, they prominently feed on worm and insects. This is something we're seeing normal, right? The insect-eating birds are disappearing. That is just gorgeous, though, isn't it? Isn't that unbelievable? Nuclear destroys everything, don't it? They can live up for 18 years. They love insects, and they're not very invertebrates, tawny invertebrates. They're particularly active on bright moonlit nights where they forage, fly, and call. So they're nocturnal too. Look at that. Wow. There's a charmer. Hey, how you doing? And look at the courtship, eh? Just spectacular. They give me a left nut and right eyeball to see a few birds do something for a change. Yeah, let's go look at some of my expeditions yesterday. It's clear when I'm looking at the friggin' amount I got left to get through the night. There's no way. How long have we been going? Oh, 2 hours and 45 minutes. Sheesh. Yeah, we're not going to get through this tonight. Yesterday, it felt good to get out there yesterday, you know what I mean? Of course we do, ain't it? It's so disappointing when you're sick a lot, right? And you can't do things. I always manage to find a way, but it's just taken so long. So the next stop I thought was going to be Placentia. I was about 10 kilometers from Placentia. And then I found out there was Ship's Cove and Fox Harbor. Ship's Cove and Fox's Harbor. So Fox Harbor was the first one. So let me play a little video of that. I'm going to do 2 of these because Ship's Cove was 20 kilometers out this road. Beautiful. It's just, there's hardly anybody living out there, but it's just beautiful. It was unbelievable. But it was a really tight road and lots of winding hills and forest. No birds. No insects. Let me bring up the video of this Fox Harbor, which I think is this one. I'm going to have to put the headphones on, make sure.
We're at the end of Long Harbor, and I guess this is the government.
That's Long Harbor. Oh, did I play that one? We should put that up there.
We're at the end of Long Harbor, and I guess this is the government wharf. I'll just try to shield you from the wind. There's no birds in the harbor whatsoever. I'm going to spin around, you probably won't be able to hear me.
I showed you the pictures earlier, right? Yeah, let's do the next one. That one's pretty windy. Or this is on the highway. No birds.
So I'm down Placentia, Argentia. I'm headed to Fox Harbor and Ship Harbor. And Ship Harbor is 20 kilometers. Fox Harbour is about 9. And then I'll come back the exact same way and go to Argentia. And then I'll be heading
I'm not turned off
west,
at this point.
hopefully.
So I'm not turned off right there. So here, this would be Fox Harbour.
So this is Fox Harbour. I finally got the gimbal hooked up.
Yeah, just start using the gimbal right
Oops,
there.
my apologies for the earlier videos. This is Sunday. This is 17th or something of August. I apologize for the wind.
It was the 18th yesterday.
Clearly there's nothing. There's no birds whatsoever. Oh my God, there's one more cormorant way over there. There's a crow, but there's no migratory birds. And coming down here, you're right in the, there's a long way between each little community. It's a long way between the communities. And there's nothing on the highway, no little birds, no squirrels, no roadkill.
The audio is really bad, so there was no roadkills, there was no let me get rid of the audio and play the video. And so there was no roadkill, there was no species. This is Fox's Harbour. And there's maybe 60, 70 people living there. There's no shells, no starfish, no snails. There was no smell. There was no smell. And so all these communities, all I done was, and I'll show you the pictures in a second, and then the video, like they shot these little videos, and this is where I start using the gimbal from here on out. I apologize for not using the gimbal, even though I had it there. This is Ship Harbour. I'm going to put the audio on, see how it works out. I got the gimbal. That's pretty rough. And so you can see there's probably 30 people live here or something like that. And it's 20 kilometers by itself down this beautiful, unbelievable, it's a stunning road, eh? And when I get there, I'd see 2 algaes. And the algaes kind of look normal, but there's clearly nothing there. I went all the way over to the corner. I'm going to play those pictures for you after. And I only took 10, 15 pictures of each spot. And we'll jump back into the news. And so yesterday I covered 550 kilometers, 340 miles or something. And every little spot I could, I went down. So I have a lot to get through. We won't get through tonight. We're clearly not going to get through tonight. So welcome to Fox Harbour. And this is where I stopped and crossed the road and shot that video. And this was Ship Harbour. So this was another 10 kilometers or something. And I'm on the wharf down there. That was the video we were just playing. And there's no, there's supposed to be 46 million migratory birds a year. But there's 370 residential species. Right? And that's really important, 370 residential species. So when you're not seeing anything, you got the biggest seabird migratory on the planet, 46 million birds, and you have 370 plus residential species, year-round species. And that includes ducks, mallards, and all kinds of other species, right? Puffins. Some puffins are here most of the year. And these pictures are actually really good quality. And birds like to hang out in groups, typically. Right, let me go back. You see that? There was one bird. And I probably said it in the video, but because I turned the audio off. There he is. That's a cormorant. And he's not native to the province. He shouldn't be here. And they're divers. They were the most successful of the 3 species we found last year. It was only 3 species out on the islands because we went out 18 times or something. And it was a probably 3 or 4% survival rate of the kittiwakes and the seagulls. But the biggest survival rate was the cormorants, which are deep divers. Not that deep, but they compared to a seagull, they're very deep divers, right? And they don't belong here. But they had the most survival for the fledglings. And there was nothing on the beaches. And then, so the next spot is St. Bride's, Castle Hill. Now, I didn't go up to Castle Hill. I'm heading straight down the road instead of up that way. But I do go up that way later, but I was too stupid to go Castle Hill because I had a big agenda. I had a lot of coastline I wanted to cover. And we're not going to get through all of that tonight, clearly. I barely scratched the work I got already gathered up. And so that's a bridge that takes, once you cross that bridge, this little town, which is Placentia, I think, and then you can, it follows the coastline. Once it's about 4 kilometers past that, you're following the coastline again. And so it was a 10.5-hour round trip. And I generally didn't turn the engine off because I was stopping so much in so many places. There was no need to turn the engine off, right? And that's Placentia. And I'm not going to play that video right now, so we'll go back to right here, and we'll pick up there when we come back. I don't think we'll get back to there tonight because we're already running up close to... it was 75 degrees Fahrenheit when I came into the studio. Otherwise, I would go an extra show. And I was going to do a show last night, but after 10.5 hours in the truck, and because there's a lot of hills, so you're chewing up gas. It's not too bad. I must admit, it's not too bad because I just welded up a problem I had that I got to put it in a video and show it to you later, but I fixed the problem anyway. And so when I was a commercial diver, this is one of my biggest fears. I've had nightmares about this stuff. And because you're down there, you're working for 5 or 6 hours straight. Because a lot of times you were using the hookah system, air hose, and you would get these shadows. On the west coast, you got a lot of logs, right? So the logs would drift over you, and the shadow would go past you, and you're like, oh, I don't want to turn around. But a lot of times they're legitimate monsters. Like I've seen the 1,200-pound halibut. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. And looked much more, not much more, but definitely looked as ferocious as that bad boy. I don't like any of them. Pirates of the Caribbean actor was killed by a shark. It's a tough way to go, folks. More whale falls, which is like a whale that sank. For every whale that we find washed up, there's 9 or 10 that sank, right? Off Los Angeles and the rest of the world combined. Well, that just because you found it don't mean that that's the only spot, right? First, there were tens of thousands of naval weapons dumped. A pair of scientific surveys recently turned up a few surprises on the seafloor off the coast of Los Angeles, California. First, there were tens of thousands of naval weapons. Tens of thousands. I think that's being very reserved. And then researchers found the remains of whales, 7 confirmed and almost certainly more than 60 total skeletons in the dark depths, a phenomenon known as a whale fall. Yeah, well, post-Fukushima, there's a lot of whale falls, right? But it is an interesting story, but excluding the fact that we found 10,000 or 10,350 gray whales, and you're only finding one out of every 9 or 10 would have died, it accounts for a whale fall many times over, doesn't it? All over the place, say. Gray whales are getting smaller. A new study has found. So are squid, so are krill, so are sardines. They're not getting smaller, they're born with leukemia. And that's what you expect. That's what the study showed, boy, with radiation generational on species, was they got smaller. And gray whales generally don't hang out in kelp forests. And I've dove in kelp forests many, many times, to the point where you can't carry a knife with you in the kelp forest because you're going to lose your knife. It's some way or another it disappears. And so what you do is, I like wearing a full face of Pegasus, but you would have to take the Pegasus off your head and then chew your arm out of the kelp, put the Pegasus back up, get some air. A Pegasus is a full face. And so once you strap it back on, then you got to purge all the water out of you. It's very difficult stuff. But eventually I got so good at it, I just didn't care anymore. But I've been stuck in just like a insect in a spider web hundreds of times. Just, I'm exhausted. Take a little break, you're like, I wish somebody would get a picture of this because no one's going to fucking believe it. Excuse the language. And a lot of times what I discovered was I can pull, because kelp is attached to rocks, right? So you can pull the rock up, and then rocks got sharp edges, you can cut the kelp off. But I would just chew it off. And when I was down there, I used to eat seafood all the time, right? I would eat probably 20 sea urchins every day on the ocean floor, because they're like cotton candy, pure energy, and rather coming up all the time. Well, I used to burn 8, 9 tanks a day too when we were tank diving, because there's all different industries, but there's different styles, right? I used to dive with a suicide pack, so I'd dive with an air hose, but you never had a backup tank. You'll get suspended for like 2 years if you get caught doing that. But it was a good way, because you're down there for 6 hours a day. There's 2 marathons in the human body each day. I sure miss it. But of course, those days are long gone. Average adult body length shrunk 13% in the last 2 decades. Well, because like once they start the next decade, then they'll say 2 decades. But in the last 13 years, basically, post-Fukushima. Fukushima, when you look at all the die-offs, and if you look pre-Fukushima, you're seeing next to nothing. Only during peak nuclear testing you'll see it. But there's this gap, and the gap starts again post-Fukushima, just after Fukushima. Well, right away they noticed mass die-off of millions of creatures on the coastlines of British Columbia and Alaska, and all the way down to New Mexico. Involves flying drones. So imagine that, eh? So they're flying drones and they take pictures, and that's considered studies. But when I went out and took pictures and I posted up on my website, which I haven't got back to, and I apologize, I haven't stopped. And it's that time of the year where, like, I've been sick a lot this year, and so now that I'm starting to feel good again, I'm active. You wouldn't believe I really want to get something accomplished, and we are. And yesterday was a big deal to travel that coastline, because 2 days before that I'd done the opposite side of the peninsula, which is like, so there's a 200-mile gap there right between the 2 spots. And so one is on the east side, one is on the west side of this huge peninsula out in the Atlantic Ocean, and the 46 million migratory birds will cut right across that peninsula. That is prime area. And it's the same thing with the fresh water. And like, I do a lot of stuff. I don't succeed in everything. I succeed, but I don't succeed the way I want to succeed, right? Because you can't. It's a very resource intensive, and we have the equipment. We've gathered it up. And that's the only reason we succeed in the things we do. Right now, you know, and I know I'm starting to digress here, I picked up more stuff, another $50 worth of stuff today, because I couldn't get out on the trail and do the things I wanted to do, so I went and picked up some more equipment, $50, more stuff for the compressor. I got on sale. really $38, a whole package of fittings and everything, right? Got it for $13. And got 2 more of those drill bits that widen out. What do you call them? I can't remember. Because we broke both of mine. I showed you that in one of my videos. And I got a chipping hammer for welding because I don't have a chipping hammer. And I'm terrified of my welds, because I can't check them. I don't have a proper... I have a little tiny chipping hammer. This was pretty embarrassing. And I got one on sale. All of those items are around $30 each. And I got it $45 or something for all of it. Off the coast, so I was really happy about that. But I basically got a really good machine shop built. And there's not many jobs that I can't tackle. I can tell you that right now. There's not. I just picked up all kinds of steel last week. And I got to show you some pictures of that stuff. Maybe I'll import that for the Tomorrow Night Show. Well, I'm basically off. I'm off my... I'm starting to digress. So let's finish off this story and we'll call it a night, I guess. Off the coast of Oregon, because I'm overheated at this stage, even though I got the big fan going. I think it's raining out again. Off the coast of Oregon, to capture the subtle psychological changes in the gray whale feeding group. Well, the gray whale, there's not a subtle changing. There's 10,350 that showed up were emaciated. They died from starvation. So not including that in the study, not acknowledging that in this story, is pretty dishonest. It just adds to the evidence across the planet animals are getting smaller. And we got quite a few studies post-Fukushima of those connotations, right? But what's really going on is the food chain is broken, and so the animals are not healthy. And you can see you got a peanut head. See that? That's a peanut head. He's emaciated. That's as clear as day. That's an emaciated whale. Look. That's 100% a peanut head. And so taking pictures is okay for them, but I document the whole coastline is eradicated, is exterminated, and that's not okay for me. And look at the stuff they got. They got the best of the best gear, and their job is to be scumbags and lie about it. Oh, look at me, Mom. I can fly a drone. I was flying my drone today, actually. Okay, so... And let me just explain that before we call it a night, because I think that's important. Oh my goodness, she's raining out there, folks. Holy sh... I hope I left the window up on the truck, is all I can say. You're going to have a sad boy tomorrow. No, I know I did. Bear with me. I just can't get over how much it's raining. Now, if you made it this far... Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. It costs very little. And it goes a long, long way. Oh, that's one of the stories for tomorrow night. So we got through about half of the material. It'll take me 2 more hours to get through the rest of it. And everybody knows that you don't want me going 3 hours. Once I go 3 hours, I start getting cranky. That's how I like to put it. I actually start getting pretty mean towards the nuclear industry. I say some pretty awful stuff. So I went out and done from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska for 6 years. And the reason we went back year after year, so I got that drone working again. It's a little finicky, but I figured out how to get it to work again now. So I'm pretty happy. That's why I had that. I had that with me yesterday. And the drone that's flying there right now, the DJI. And I don't carry the big camera with me. It's just I get that. My other camera and the gimbal is pretty darn good. And that's the camera I'm using right now that you're looking at. And so that was up in the Salmon River. But so I went out and done research expeditions for 6 years. And the species to your left are exterminated. This is why all the birds are getting smaller, because they don't have an option or a supplement to their migratory species to feed on. because they travel with migratory species, the seabirds, right? And normally they would come into the coastline and be all these species to your left. And so we went back for 5 more years to see if the species to your left recovered. And so they didn't come back and fill in the coastline. And so when you hear me talking about an extinction event, an ELE, an extinction level event, it's because all of those species are now exterminated. They're exterminated because of the radioactive fallout from multiple reactors and fuel pools melting down. And one of the stories we had earlier acknowledged the beluga whales might have cancer because of Chernobyl, despite the fact that Fukushima was just buried the areas they're talking about, and confirmed radioactive fallout from government studies, one from Ottawa and one from the West Coast. And the one from Ottawa was 220 million atoms, and this was the xenon-133 at 450,000 counts per minute. This is 19.5 days. So when we done the studies on the West Coast, we knew that we had broken the food chain, and there was 33,000 insects that lived at the high tide lines of this tropical rainforest on the West Coast, where there's 27,000 islands. Right, there's 27,000 islands. And I went up there and meandered through these islands, and this is very dangerous stuff. You're talking about millions and millions and millions of sunkers of rocks just below the surface, right? But anyway, they're not out there pretending they're in the fuel pool of a building that doesn't exist because it's like a banana and a potato chip or walking in the sunshine. They're out there doing it because this stuff is lethal. And we know it's lethal because we've done the research, and the most vulnerable species have disappeared. They're exterminated. And we'll pick up here tomorrow night. Did I make it to my 2-hour mark? Oh, I think I done a bit better, Dana. 2 hours, 7 minutes. Let's bring up the chat and the poll, rather. Fukushima has 4 nuclear reactors and 8 fuel pools melting down. Nuclear fallout, radioactive fallout, because you're limited to how many digits you can put there. An extinction level event. So I put that poll in the first section below the video to expand on it just a little bit, because the radioactive fallout is so real. Pretending that didn't happen is the problem, right? So it's a great poll. I can't believe we only got 34 votes on our poll. That's bizarre. Yes, Sandra's really good. Wolf Churchill. Hi, Sandra. Hi, everybody. And just a reminder, I got one of James's songs I wanted to play for a close. Come down, Charlie's on the line. That's one of James's songs. Calling in to waste our time. Pretty cool. So we had Tabitha Goody donated 100, Colette donated 50, James donated 200, and that got us back in business at the time when I was capable, right? See everybody tomorrow night. We're going to pick up tomorrow night. This is Calm Down Charlie's song again. Pretty cool, eh? Have a great night, everybody. Have a great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Pick up where we left off. We still got a lot of die-off. I'll scour the news for any recent stories. We're going to cover that oarfish die-off tomorrow night. Take care, folks. I'll see everybody on the next side. Fukushima still in tears. Can't keep hiding from those fears. Sounds like a yeah, I agree, James. You're still really cool, though, man. Thank you, everybody. Denial in his every vow. Years have passed, but still the same. Fukushima's not a game. Face the facts, can't you see? Truth will set the oceans free. Radiation
traumatized. We can't let this one slide. Oh, Charlie, calm down, please. Truth ain't covered by the breeze. Fukushima still in tears.